And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing. Yes.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
Want to say peace and blessings, family. Hope all is well with you guys. My apologies for being late. Had a long day today, so I want to apologize to you guys for being late tonight. We're going to continue on with episode 2 of our series that we are doing rather, titled Words of Confusion. So let me go ahead and put the banner at the bottom. Today we're going to focus on part 1. I'm gonna have to break this up into 2 parts probably, because it's a in-depth, detailed lesson. Episode 1, we dealt with the word church. This episode, we're dealing with the word Jew, Greek, and Gentile. And I know that that is one of those words of confusion that each and every one of us have been confused about. And so we're going to really address that tonight. And depending on how we are with time, we may be able to do the entire lesson. If not, then we'll just break it up into 2 sessions. As far as this episode to be broken up into 2, we'll have a part 1 and a part 2. So let me go ahead and put this inside let me update the ticker here. So that way those that are coming on late and trying to figure out what the discussion is for tonight, you'll have it on your screen. So here it is at the bottom. That's the banner, Words of Confusion, episode 2, Jew, Greek, and the Gentile. So I pray that you guys had a blessed Shabbat. I hope you guys had a blessed Shabbat. We had a great Shabbat on our end. We had a great Shabbat on our end. So we'll save the shout outs for the end of the presentation. So we're just going to jump right on in. I was going to have animations here and, do a lot of clips like I would normally do. But because of the sake of time in terms of the amount of material that I want to cover, I'm going to limit that tonight. All right. So I'm going to limit that tonight. So these are another set of words that are very confusing. And if you guys can relate to this, if you guys can attest, when you were inside the church and especially when you hear the word Jew, right, and you hear the word Gentile, for those that are watching right now, was that a word of confusion for you? If it was, type 1 inside the comment section. If it was, like, what is a Gentile? What does it mean to be a Gentile? What is a Jew? What does it really mean to be a Jew. So if you if that was one of those words of confusion for you, type one inside the comment section. And I believe if we really understood these two words, we'll have a better understanding of even reading Apostle Paul's letters, his epistles, right? They are letters, right? We'll have a better understanding of reading his texts, or should I say his letters, when he says Jews and Gentiles, the Jews first, then the Gentiles. We'll get better, proper clarity, and we're going to cover some of those scriptures as well. And after we complete this series, I'm going to do another series titled Apostle Paul on Trial. And we're going to go through Apostle Paul's letters to see, did he really speak against it? Did he really speak against the law like how Christianity has taught so many of us, coming up in that system? So for me, what really shifted a lot of things for me is just me preparing my sermon. I was preparing a sermon, and one of the things that you learn in preparing a sermon, of course, you have your your opening, what you want to cover. You go over the title and all those different things, just like you would write out a letter, so to speak. It's how you would prepare your sermon. You have the key is like your closing, the closing part of your sermon. And so you guys probably notice on many preachers or pastors or teachers from within the church, you'll see some commonalities with some of the closing verses that they would use to close out their sermons, like, the truth and the truth shall set you free, or the truth shall make you free. Well, that's coming out of John chapter 8. And for me, what really shifted a lot for me in terms of that word Jew is John chapter 8. I was doing an actual message on the entire chapter, and I was literally going verse by verse, right, line by line, to really give a proper clarity of what that chapter or what is being stated inside that particular text. And just when I was reading, and I know that you'll read your chapter, you'll see as you're reading that book, in that particular chapter, it says that the Messiah is dealing with Jews, that the Messiah is dealing with the Jews. But what really got me was when his interaction with them, he said that, or actually they said to him, right? They said that we are Abraham's seed, but we never knew bondage. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but I'll address that in another teaching. But that really sent me down a different path. It really shifted me and pulled me out of that system. That was the chapter that pulled me out. It's like, wait a minute, because in school, that's, you just went with the flow, because you're trusting those that are teaching you. You're trusting the institution. So when I saw that, I'm going to all my books and, going through research, and I'm like, wait a minute, how can they be Abraham's seed but never knew bondage? Especially when we know that that's Israel's history. That's part of the reputation of Israel is captivity, right? To the point that even the prophet Jeremiah had to ask the Most High, man, is this what Israel is designed for? Is this all Israel is designed to do, is to be enslaved by another community? And so that really, shifted. It was like a paradigm shift for me, and I'm not going to get into all of that. We'll finish that up another time. But I just wanted to let you know that that's the chapter that did it for me. And I'm a very analytical person, especially when it comes to data. I am a geek. I'm a pastor, but I am a geek. Information, I am a geek. I can hack, you name it. I am a geek. I can program, you name it. I am a geek. And when I started analyzing, I'm like, wait a minute, you don't hardly see, the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom reference in what is called the New Testament. What many would call the New Testament. I refer to it as the renewed covenant, right? And refer to what many call the Old Testament. I refer to that as the established covenant. And that's another discussion. But all through the established covenant, we see the northern and southern kingdom being referenced. But we don't see that in the renewed covenant. but they are referenced there. And I'm going to show you. It's just that these words of confusion has caused a lot of problems, right? And we'll get to that. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it, family. I'm sure that you guys have, some of you guys, I saw some of the responses. Let's see here. Let's put put some of the responses here. Yeah, word of confusion. We're all in it. We all can agree that word, those labels, Jew and Gentile, those are words in confusion, and it's really doing a great disservice for Yah's people. It's really causing a lot of problems, and I'm going to highlight, and I may be able to bring in an audio from someone from within the Jewish community that actually, his name is Benjamin Friedman, who actually spoke out against this. And I'm going to reference, use some of his book that he wrote, or should we say, yeah, I would say it was a book. You could call it a book, but he spoke against his own community, especially with the confusion of that word Jew, and really identified the politics behind that word Jew and the word in that phrase Semitic. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it, family. I'm not going to prolong this here. Let's get into it because we have a lot to cover here. So words of confusion: Jew, Greek, Gentile. So we're going to start off by addressing the word Greek. We're going to address Greek, and we're going to address Gentile in the first portion, the first half of this teaching. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with Romans chapter 9, verse 24. Let's go there and make a note, family. Make a note of this. Now, this is a text right here that I'm sure you guys have read it, and you hear it in the church, especially when they want to make a distinction between the Jews and the Gentiles. They'll go to this text right here, this chapter, this verse, and this is one of the verses that completely, if you understand, you hear the term hermeneutics over and over again. You hear the term exegete and eisegete. You hear those terms over and over again. And those are hermeneutics is just a scientific way of approaching ancient texts. You have biblical hermeneutics and you have hermeneutics, giving you a system of how to approach the text. For example, you may have, let's just say, I'm just going to use this example. Somebody may write, let's just say, I write my wife a love letter, right? And 2,000 years from now, it gets discovered, but part of that letter is missing. Part of that letter, of course, the language may change and evolve up until that time. How would you decipher? How would you go through that letter to determine if it's a love letter, if it's a letter that I'm complaining, a letter of divorce? How would you go through that letter to actually tell or know exactly what's the proper context of it? So that's where you start getting into hermeneutics, because hermeneutics teaches the process, a system, a science, of how to address ancient texts, right? And when you hear the term exegete, right, that is what allowing the text to speak to you and not you trying to force or superimpose what you want the text to say, right? And same thing, and that's when you get into the word eisegete, because now you are what? You are putting your influence, you're influencing the text, you're superimposing the text. So with that being said, the key is we're going to let the text speak for itself. So this is Romans again, chapter 9, verse 24. Even us, whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. Right? So let's go into this really pick apart this verse, right? So that way we can really understand the proper context. Because the question we're going to ask is, who are they referring to? Are they referring to Jews? Because, all of us done heard that before. The Jews are everyone. The Gentiles are, what is it? Anyone that are not Jews. That's the definition of Gentiles. Anyone who are not the Jews. And that's confusing, right? Very confusing. Why? Because now when you hear Jew, you think of all of Israel, That's why I say it's a word of confusion, and we're going to address that. All right. So even us, whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. So what is a Gentile? What is a Gentile? All right. What is a Gentile? And I'm going to ask that question. If we're going to have a little interaction here, for those that know the answer or want to post the answer, post it inside the chat. What is a Gentile? Just the first thing that comes to your mind, just type it into the chat. What is a Gentile? And then I'll share some of the comments up on the screen. So what is a Gentile? Just type it up. Just put it into the chat real quick. You know, what is a Gentile? All right. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds and we'll move on. But what is a Gentile? Just type it inside the chat and I'll review your answers. All right. All right. Let's see here. Nations. All right. From Sharon Glover. Appreciate your response. Let's see here. From chapter and verses. I thought I saw yeah, book, chapter, verses, nations, people. All right. J High Style, those not of physical Israel. Cool J, a non-Israelite. Sister Joy, Japheth's seed. All right. Ruhama, my cousin here, she says people from the tribe of Japheth. Let's see here. Naomi Levy, we see a heathen. Shirley Greer, we see non-Israelite, right? Let's see what else we have here. A Gentile is someone who isn't set apart in Israel. That's Zena Motley. Okay. Let's see a few more here. Those who, let's see, I thought I saw the journey or this journey. Those who the covenant was not initially made with. Vicky Young, not of Israelite culture. Descendants of Japheth by Dexter Lyons. And peace and blessings to you, my brother. Appreciate you. Let's see here. Aid, I guess that's how you pronounce Ode or Odd. But when I see that that umlaut over it, it makes me want to say the A sound, like aid. But nevertheless, other nations besides Israel. So, okay, you guys are giving some great responses, and we're going to give proper clarity on it. The offsprings of Japheth. Let's see here. An Israelite that has taken on the customs of the nations. Great answer. Guys, got some great answers here. Gentiles can be the nations, and Israelite out of covenant, non-Israelites. All right, you guys are giving some great answers. So let's go ahead and go through this, and let's see exactly what we the conclusion that we come up to after seeing these answers, after I present this information to you. All right, so let's see what a Gentile is. See, most would say it refers to all who are not Jews. Right? I put a check there, but then I put an X there. And I'm going to share with you why this is partially correct and partially incorrect based on the definition. And for the sake of this lesson, right, I'm using the word Jew for the sake of this lesson, because we know this word Jew did not exist during the time of the antiquities. We know this word Jew is not actually a Greek word. This word Jew is an Old English word. But anyway, I'm not going to get into all of that. So, is this correct? All right. Were Israelites ever called Gentiles? We're going to cover that. Let's start with going to the Easton Bible Dictionary, 1894. Let's start with them. And family, these sources that I'm sharing, please make a note of these sources, right? You can download this Bible dictionary for free. You could go to archive.org and you could download this dictionary here. It's great to get some of these older dictionaries so that way you can get proper clarity, because a lot of these new dictionaries are really watered down. And a lot of them have taken out some pertinent information here. All right. So let's see what it says here. And I want to make it clear, right? Even in some of these dictionaries, you still have to make sure you properly vet the information that you're reading. Cross-reference it because I'm going to show you why. But nevertheless, let's see what it says here. Gentiles. Notice what it says. Hebrews, usually in plural, goyim, right? So it's saying that in Hebrew, the word Gentile is pronounced goyim. That's plural, right? Goy or gayam, right? Gawayam is another way to pronounce it in ancient Hebrew. So when you see goy and you see the im, this im here is the masculine plural. All right. So meaning in general, all nations except the Jews. Notice what it says. Meaning in general, now generic, right? Common, right? In most circles, all nations except the Jews. In course of time, as the Jews began more and more to pride themselves on their particular privileges, it acquired unpleasant associations and was used as a term of contempt. In the New Testament, the Greek word you see here, Hellenes, or some would say pronounce it Hellenes, right? Meaning literally Greek. And it gives us some references here. We're not going to go to all these sources. We may visit Acts 16:1, but we're not going to visit all these sources. Generally denotes any non-Jewish nation. All right. So in general, just iterating some key points from that definition I read to you. In general, all nations except the Jews. And that's the common belief that many of us have embraced, that particular definition. All of us, for the most part, was under that thought, that notion that Gentile means all those that are not blood descendants of Israel, basically. So let's go to the Greek definition of Gentile. Let's go to the Greek definition of it. Right. And here we see ethnos, right? We see ethnos. Notice what it says. Ethnos, a race. And we know that when we see a race, that is of modern. That's not ancient, right? Race, that institutional race was created in the 18th century. This is race, that whole construct is not something that was done back in the antiquities, the ancient times. So we could really disregard that whole race thing. But anyway, I'll just for the sake, we have it here. I'll just read it. A race, an example, a tribe, a foreign, in other words, non-Jewish. And notice what you see: Gentile, heathen, nation, people. And then you see here a tribe, nation, people group. All right. And then you see entry number 4. I didn't put all the entries here. And this is coming from what you see in the back here. Right. Actually, it's not the full entries are not there. But anyway, it says in the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true Most High, the true Yahweh Elohim. I'm not going to say God. You guys go back and watch the lesson I did on that and you'll see why. Right. So worshiping the true Most High, or Yahweh, or Elohim. Some of you guys would say Elohim. Right. Pagan, Gentiles. So as you see here again, coming from that, just a highlight from that definition I just shared with you, specifically a foreign, non-Jewish. All right. Let me do something real quick because I'm seeing a lot of these slides that's coming across like this, and I don't like the transitions here. Let me do something real quick. You know, you guys probably know by now that I am a perfectionist when it comes to present my presentations. I believe that visual does a lot for the overall continuity and integrity of your presentations. And I encourage you guys, if you looking to do lessons, spend time with really how you present your information. Because the better you present your information, the easier it is on those that you are teaching. And you don't have to really explain, go into depth with some of the sources, because they will see the sources and they can make a note of it for themselves. Let me just do a couple of things here. Let me just go into something here just to make sure. Bear with me one second, family. I just want to fix something here because it's kind of a stickler for me. All right, let's see here. Let me correct something real quick. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. Let me just now see where this filter is. That's not that one. That one. All right, let me take this one out. I see why I'm having all those transitions and it's really irking me. All right, there we go. I think that's the only one that we have there with that type of transition. All right, here we go. My apologies, family. I just was getting bothered by that. All right. I didn't like that transition. Keep flashing every time I go to another slide. Okay. All right. So let's get back into it. All right. All right. Now let's try this again. Okay. Now we're good. Now let's go ahead and get back into it. My apologies. I'm a stickler for making sure that my presentations are done in a way that's easy for you guys to grasp the information because I know I cover a lot. So again, let's go back here. Ethnos, a tribe, a foreign, in other words, non-Jewish, Gentile, heathen, nation, people. A tribe, nation, people group. Entry number 4. In the Old Testament, notice what it says. In the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true Most High, pagans, Gentiles. All right. So again, especially a foreign non-Jewish. And then we see these key words in that definition: tribe, nation, people. So let's go back to the Easton Bible Dictionary again. All right. Let's continue on with this definition here of Gentile. Right. Let's go back there. And as you see here, it says in the New Testament, the Greek word Hellenes, meaning literally Greek, generally denotes any non-Jewish nation. So in the renewed covenant, right, which many refer to the New Testament, the Greek word Hellenes, meaning is literally Greek. It transliterates to the word Greek, all right, based off of what we just read. So the Greek definition of Hellenes, let's go back, let's walk this thing out. Hellenes, or Hellenane, as we see here, it says here, Hellenan, Grecian, right? A Greek-speaking person, Gentile, Greek, right? You see how we starting to go into the layers when we see the word Greek, and we already saw a word ethnos that transliterated to Gentile, and so now we see another term here, Hellenan, which you will also see can be transliterated to Greek, Gentile. So you have to make sure when you're actually reading these scriptures, it's imperative for you to identify what Greek word do you see inside the text? What word that's there in the actual text that's transliterating to the word Gentile? Because we see that I've already given you ethnos that transliterates, can be transliterated to the word Gentile, but we also see another one here, Hellenane, right, which can be transliterated to the word Gentile. But notice what it says, Hellenan, and then you see it on parentheses, in other words, a Grecian, and then it goes on to say, or inhabitant of Hellas, by extension, a Greek-speaking person, especially a non-Jew, Gentile, Greek. But then when you go to the sub-entries, and this is where you get into the in-depth definition of it, it says a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or the Greek island or colonies. Now, it's interesting when you see that word island, right? Because we'll get to there a little later when we go and deal with Genesis chapter 10, when we deal with the descendants of Japheth, the isle of the Gentiles, right? You guys remember that quote. So entry number 1 says a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or or of the Greek island or colonies. And then in this entry number 2, it says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. So make a note of this again. I'll read it again. Entry number 2, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. So Greek is transliterated from the word Hellenen, as we just covered. So now let's go to Acts chapter 16, verse 1. Let's go there, because let's see how this particular application of Hellenen, let's go back here, Hellenen. Let's go to the application of this word. Acts chapter 16, verse 1. Right? And it says, then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, right? But his father was a Greek. So Timothy's mother was said to be a Jewess, or Udeos, right? And when you go into the earlier translations and manuscripts, you'll see Udeos. You will not see Jew. That's a whole nother discussion. I didn't really go too deep into that in this presentation because I didn't want to give you guys too much information. I didn't want to overflood you here. All right, let's see here. Didn't want to just flood you with information. So Timothy's father, right? Father was a Greek. And in the text, when you look at it from the Greek, you'll see this word Hellenen, as we just covered and defined. So was Timothy's father a blood descendant of the Greeks, or simply an Israelite who was Hellenized? Right? That would be a good question to ask, because now that we saw the definition of this word and we saw the sub entry of it, was Timothy's father a blood descendant of the Greeks? Right? Was he a Greek, or was he simply an Israelite who was Hellenized? I think that's a great question to ask. So I want to give you just a source, right? This is coming from the complete works of John Chrysostom. I don't know why I keep saying Chrysostom. I don't want to know why I keep pronouncing his name this way, but Chrysostom or Stom, right? So let's go to his works and let's see what he says, right? And he lived during the time of 349 AD to 407 AD is what, from basically the mid 4th century into the turn going into the 5th century. So 349 AD to 407 AD. That's the time that he lived. And this is coming from his complete works. All right. So this is St. John Chrysostom, right? This is what he says inside his works about Timothy, right? He says this, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, but his father was a Greek, which was well reported of by the brethren, that were at Lystra and Iconium, and Iconium, for mispronouncing the word. Him would Paul have to go forth with him, and took and circumcised him, right? So again, let me read it again so you can see what he says. This is going back to like the 4th century. And behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, but his father was a Greek, which was well reported of by the brethren, right? That were at Lystra and Iconium. Him would Paul have to go forth with him, and took and circumcised him, because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Greek. So we see in the writings of the 4th century by St. John, that teach or have taught during that time that Timothy's father was a Greek, right? Didn't say that he was a Jew, didn't say he was a convert. But again, that word Hellenes, as we just highlighted, Hellenen rather, it can mean someone that was an Israelite practicing or taking on and embracing the Roman culture. Right. So it can, I just want to put that thought out there, even though I'm giving you a source here that says and have taught that Timothy his father was Greek. All right. In other words, not a blood descendant of Israel. And what's interesting about what I'm reading further in this, where we see that Apostle Paul circumcises him. He circumcises Timothy, even though Paul's primary argument, the law that he dealt with so much, was circumcision. And that's a whole nother discussion. So for they knew all that his father was a Greek. It is indeed amazing the wisdom of Paul. He that has had so many battles about what? Circumcision, not about whether or not we are to adhere to all the law. That's why I'm putting this up here, so that way you guys can see for yourself. All right. So just so that way you guys can understand. So again, even here it says that Apostle Paul, he had so many battles about the circumcision. He that moved all things to this end, it did not give over until he had carried his point. Now that the decree is made, the decree that was made in the council, if you want to call it the Council of Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Council, right, about the circumcision, right, circumcises the disciple. He not only does not forbid others, but himself does this thing. So instead of him being adamant, speaking against the law of circumcision, he circumcises Timothy. So this gives you the proper perspective of exactly what Paul was, his stance about the circumcision. He wasn't saying do away with circumcision, right? But he was dealing with the application of it. But that's another discussion. So let's go back here. Hellenen also means Grecian. So we saw that a Hellenen, it could be a person, a Greek, right? A blood descendant, but it can also refer to an Israelite that basically embraced the Greek culture. But then we also see the word Grecian. We see Grecian. See, this is why I say we have to go further. We have to do proper study when we're going through this text. Right? So this is why I want to make sure you understand. I see you up next. I see your comments there. But this is why I want to make sure I do the teaching here. Because for me, even though I see what the text says in terms of some of the older scholars, so to speak, that have stated that Timothy was his father was a non-Israelite, I don't believe it. I really don't believe it because of the different references and sources that I've seen. That's why I'm putting this question out there. That's why I'm putting this thought out there. That's why we're doing this teaching here, because he could have very well been an Israelite who just was Hellenized, because we do know that there were Hellenized Israelites. So I just wanted to present that portion, present that argument here. So I definitely understand you guys' questions. Post on here, but this is why I wanted to let you see what the text says in some key words here. So that way you can properly come to at least have a discussion about it, that no one could just tell you without you actually doing your own due diligence. Right. And that's part of the problem. We trusted so many people to tell us what the text mean versus taking it upon ourselves to go in it for ourselves and get proper clarity. And that's how I teach our ministers inside our assembly. Right. But anyway, Hellenen also means Grecians. So what is a Grecian? What is aggression? Some say Grecian. What is a Grecian? All right. Notice now you see another word still come from that word Hellenin. But now we see Hellenistes, right? It says here, a Hellenist or Greek speaking, and I don't like to use the word Jew, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to use it for now. A Hellenist or Greek speaking Jew. Let me say that again. A Hellenist or Greek speaking Jew. And then the sub entries here, it says one who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. Then sub entry B, used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So why did I bring this up? Well, let's go to the text here. Let's go to Acts chapter 6, verse 1 through 3. And this is what it says. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, it is not reason that we should not leave the word of Yahweh and serve tables. Verse 3, wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. Right? So when we go back to this text here, going to verse 1, you see Grecians. Now I want to go back to this definition here so that way you guys understand, right? One who imitates the manners and customs or worship of the Greeks. And it says here, sub-entry B, used in the New Testament of Israelites, Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So when you see Grecian, that is basically a Hebrew that is speaking Greek. All right. That's why I want to give clarity there. So here, when you read this text, a murmuring of the Grecians, in other words, those that are actually speaking, those that have been Hellenized, those that are speaking the Greek language. The Hebrews, those are ones that are speaking what? The Hebrew language, the Hebrew tongues. But we know that they had a communication here because they have a dialogue here, because their widows were neglected in daily ministration. All right, let me fast forward here. Let's go here. And I want to just highlight some key words, right? What is a disciple, right? Because here they have to do a vote here. They have, in this particular text that I highlighted, they had to select a candidate. And we'll get to that in a second here. So what is a disciple? Right? This is all going to tie in together. All right, family. What is a disciple? What is a disciple? I'm putting that question out there, and that way you guys can drop your answers inside the comment section, trying to make this an interactive lesson here. So what is a disciple? All right. So what is a disciple? Just go ahead and put your comments inside the comment section. What is a disciple? In the Hebrew word, and I'm going to say it from the ancient Hebrew, what you see on your screen is lamad. So what is a disciple? What is a disciple? Jay Highstyle, my buddy, said a follower. Let's see who else. Let's see, woman of Yah, someone who is taught by the master, Yahusha. All right. Let's see who else. Second birth Hebrew, one who follows a teacher. That's some great answers, guys. Taught one by Vicky Youngblood. You guys are giving some great answers. Let's see here. Big Ak, peace and blessings to you, brother. A student. Rahama, one discipled, right, in the ways of Yah. Joy, a student and follower. Divine Seed, a pupil. This journey follower who teaches others. Let's see here. Yeti, brother live, a follower of a covenant moray. All right, you guys are giving some great answers. So guess what? I'm going to show you exactly what it is. Peace and blessings again, Dexter Lyons. Appreciate it for follower. Who else do we have here? Amaria, Hepzibah, I was saying Hepzibah, but Hepzibah, a person who mimics in every way their teacher in thought and action. You guys are giving some great answers here. Yah's son, teacher, student, philosopher. Jacqueline Pug, a student, sister light to the nations, a follower of the Messiah. All right. So, all right, here we go. Let's go ahead and define it for you. And this is all going to tie in. So this is mathetes. That's the Greek pronunciation of it. But as we see, disciple means a learner, an example, pupil, disciple, right? That's what it means in the Greek, but I'm going to take it a step further, right? A disciple is someone who has learned in the law. A disciple, you have to know the word of the Most High. And the disciples at this time was teaching out of what? The law and the prophets. That's a whole nother discussion. That's a fact, though. So when we go to the word learned, right? Because this is the key description of a disciple, someone who has learned. And that description here, as you see here, the definition, it says in entry number 1, of a person having much knowledge acquired by what? Study. That's what a disciple is, a person who acquired much knowledge by way of studying. And in the sub entry, it says showing, requiring, or characterized by learning, scholarly. So to be a disciple, you have to be someone that's willing to study. We have so many people that are calling themselves a disciple of the Messiah, and they don't study. Don't study. But you have to be willing to learn, not just teach, but willing to learn to be a disciple. So the other thing, like we said, they have to be a student of law. They have to study the law. So what is the law? You guys will see here in the Israeli language, this will be pronounced Torah, right? Or in the ancient Hebrew, will be Tha Ra or Tha Wara, however you want to pronounce it. But anyway, what is the law? What is Torah? All right. My slides are off here, but if we go to the definition of it from the Hebraic perspective, we see here a precept, statute, the Decalogue or Pentateuch. Right now, that's dealing with the first 5 books of the scriptures, which is referred to as the books of law or the law of Moses. Right. But it goes on to say here, this is what's important here. Law, direction, instruction. And then in sub entry, it says instruction, direction. And then in the sub entry of the sub entry, it says body of prophetic teaching, instruction in messianic age. Right. So we have to understand when we're dealing with law, direction, and instructions, we're dealing with what? The body of prophetic teaching, instructions in the messianic age, and I like this here, body of priestly direction or instructions, body of legal directives. All right. So let's go ahead and go to Exodus chapter 24, verse 12. Let's bring this all together so we can stay on the topic here. So notice what it says here. This is telling us how the Most High wrote his commandments on tablets and gave it to Moses, said a law and commandments. So when Yahweh said it to Moses, come up to me into the mount and be there. He said, come on up here and be there. All right. Telling him to come up to the mount and told Moses, be there. Basically, in a nutshell, meet me there and you better show up. And I will give thee table of stones, and a law and commandments, which I have written, the Most High, not Moses, that the Most High written, that thou mayest teach them, right? Teach. So a disciple is required to know and teach the law. Let's go back here. So Moses had to get the law from the Most High and then teach it. So the disciples, if you say you're a disciple of the Messiah and you're not teaching the law properly, guess what? You're not a disciple. You're someone else's disciple. So a disciple is required to know and teach the law. Here's Isaiah chapter 8, verse 16. We see that word disciple here. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples, right? Bind up the testimony, sealed the law among my disciples. So let's bring this back over, right? Hebrew definition of disciple. Man, my slides is all jacked up. Forgive me for messing up the backgrounds and everything, but at least you can still see the definition. Lamad, it means to teach, expert, instruct, learn, skillful, teach, teacher. That's what a disciple is. Teach, but also what? Learn, skillful. All right. And this is the Hebrew letter right here. This is the lamad right here. Staff, disciple, to learn, numerical value 30. Right? That is the number, right, that the Messiah was when he started his ministry. And if you really understand why, you go to the law, you'll see why he started his ministry at the age of 30. Another discussion, not tonight though. And that's the pictograph, which is the pictograph of a staff. Okay, so bringing this back in. So the Messiah sealed his disciples and the law. That's why he told them, don't think that you are above the law. Think not that I come to destroy the law and the prophets. He's talking to his disciples, telling them that they're subjected to the law, just like their brothers and sisters. Okay, so Matthew 5:17 through 20, this is what it says. It's giving the information on that. I'm not going to go too far on this because I don't want to get away from the overall narrative that we're teaching. So that's what Matthew 5, verse 17 through 20 will teach. But this is the key verse. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. All right. Ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. All right. So now let's bring this back in. So remember, a Grecian is a Greek speaking Jew. Let me say that again. A Grecian is a Greek speaking Jew. All right. So Stephen and Philip, they were Grecians. So Stephen and Philip were Greeks. They were Greek speaking Jews or Greek speaking Israelites. So let's go to Acts chapter 6, verse 5. Let's go back here. Right. And notice here, and the saying pleased the whole multitude. They chose Stephen. See, they had candidates here and they selected their candidates here. As you see here, it says the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Spirit, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, right? Notice what it says, and Nicholas, rather, a proselyte of Antioch. So they made it clear for you to understand that Nicholas was a proselyte. The rest of these guys here we see here, we're dealing with, especially when we're dealing here, we're dealing with Israelites. But Nicholas was a proselyte, meaning he was a convert. Now, let me give you clarity. Again, there were 6 candidates, but only one was not a blood descendant of Israel. Now, it was Nicholas. Nicholas was a proselyte. Here's the Greek definition of a proselyte. It says here, and etc., in other words, convert to Judaism. And I don't like to even use that word Judaism. Why? Because of how we see it defined today with the Talmud and all that other stuff. Okay, so what did we learn so far? Right, bringing it back in, that the Greek word for Gentile is Hellenes. Right, the Greek word for Gentile, this is what we learned so far. The Greek word for Gentile is Hellenes. Hellenen also means Grecians, right? The Greek word for Gentile is Hellenes. And then we see Hellenen also means Grecians. Hellenes means all who are not Jews. Grecians means Jews who imitate Greeks born in foreign lands and speak Greek, right? This is why you can see why it can be confusing when you go through these words. So remember, a Gentile also means tribe, nation, and it also means people. Let me say this again. That word Gentile also what? Means tribe, nation, people. Now let's go to what many will call the Old Testament, which I refer to the established covenant, or you could say Torah, right? Because we're going into one of the book's laws, right? So the nation of Japheth, Genesis chapter 10, verse 5. It says this: by these were the isles of the Gentiles. Now, in the Hebrew, you're going to see Gawayam, or you'll say Ga-Yam, right? You see here, this is nations, even though it's transliterated to Gentiles, but it's still nations, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongues, after their families and their nations, right? Still Gawayam, right? You know, we're still dealing with what? Nations. You see, Gentiles, still nation, in the isle of the nations, divided in their lands. That's how the better translation would be. But that word Gentile can be a word of confusion, because we see nations being referred to Japheth, and we see the Hebrew words there, right? So in ancient Hebrew or Paleo Hebrew, word for the word for nation is right at the bottom here, Gawayam or Ga-Yam, the masculine plural. Some would say Gayim or Goyim, right? Use this as a vowel letter to make an O sound, which is the colon, right? The colon va. That's what this will be used as, right? So Goyim, but actually doing this from ancient Hebrew. So Gawayam or Ga-Yam. So this is how you will see it in the actual Paleo, right? The actual ancient Hebrew, right? This is right here. This is my fonts that I created, right? So when I'm teaching Hebrew, it's easier for those that are learning from the beginning phases to really identify the letters. So now when we see it from the actual Paleo, the ancient Hebrew, notice what you see, Ga-Wayam. It's still the same, right? So this is the Hebrew word, Paleo Hebrew word for Gentile or nation. So now let's look at Ham. Let's go to verse 20 of the same text. And I'm doing this for a reason, right? You see here, these are the sons of Ham or Ham, after their families, their tongues, their countries, and their what? Nations. But guess what? You'll see this word there, right? Gawayam under Ham. Now, when you see this by there, this is the prefix for N. So guess what? And nations. This is plural, nations. This is under Ham. But let's go under Shem. Let's go to verse 31. And you can look this up, family. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, their tongues, their lands, after their what? Nations. And guess what? You'll see this word here. You'll see the prefix and you see the plurality of nations, Gawayam. And I'm saying this from the ancient Hebrew perspective. So I want to make that clear, family. So you still see the same word is there. So we see the word Gentile. What made them change it that way? What made them transliterate the same Hebrew words, right? That's used for all the other nations that came out of the other brothers, right? Why did they put Gentile there for Japheth? All right. So is the Paleo Hebrew word for Gentile in this scripture exclusively used for Japheth? No. Right. Let's go to Genesis 10, verse 32. This is the key. It says, these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations and their nations. Now you see what? And their nations, you see what? Gawayam. And by these were the nations. Then you see Ga-Yam, divided in the earth after the flood. So guess what? This is why I said this is a word of confusion. This is a word of confusion, family. I can also show you that word pagan or heathen, if you see the etymology of the word, you'll start getting a better understanding. I may pull it up here in a second. I don't think I put it in this presentation. And I'm going to show you the etymology of the word pagan. I'm going to show you the etymology of the word heathen, so you get a better understanding. When you call someone heathen, what does it mean? Why did they put that word pagan, normally used for Romans, Greeks, those type of nations? But heathen is used for our brothers and sisters, for our community. I'm going to show you here shortly. All right. So let's go ahead and make some continue to move forward here, and we'll see where we are with the time. So Isle of the Gentiles simply means divided nations along the coast. Let me say that again. When you see Isle of the Gentiles, it simply means divided nations along the coast. That's all it means. Nations that are divided among the coast. But that word Gawayam or Gayam or Gayim or Goyim, right? That still transliterates to the word nation. So when we look at the descendants of Japheth, it's just saying these nations were divided along the coast. So Isle of the Gentiles again simply means divided nations along the coast. So the Paleo Hebrew word for Gentile is not used exclusively for the descendants of Japheth. Let me say that again. Can I say that again, family? The Paleo word, Hebrew word for Gentiles is not exclusively used for the descendants of Japheth. Man, we're going to have to, add whoever the people that came up with this deceptive teaching, right? We're going to have to put them inside the bucket. We're going to add them to the bucket list. Let me add them to the bucket list right now. We're going to add them to the bucket list, right? Also, we're going to give them a 3-piece on top of it because, again, this is why I say these are words of and let's toss it out. All right, so we got to add it to the bucket list, family. One more time. All right, so you guys see why I'm doing this lesson. These are words of confusion. So in ancient Hebrew, the same word that's used for Gentiles under Japheth is used under Shem, is used also under Ham, and I just proved that. So make it a point, family. Genesis chapter 10, learn and master that chapter. Right. And the reason why I say master it, because guess what? You could debunk so many arguments. You can settle so many arguments with that, from heritage or identity. When many will say identity doesn't matter, just take them right there. Right. That's right, Mr. Original School. Words of confusion is confusion of words. All right. So you saw how we just covered the Gentile portion of it. Right. Let's see what time we have here. We made good time here. So we got enough time to get into some of the Jew portion of it. But before we do that, let me go ahead and pull up, as I promised you, because I didn't put it inside this presentation. Let me pull up the etymology dictionary definition of heathen real quick, a pagan. Let me see if I can pull it up here, because I want to give you another point. I didn't put it here. I should have, but I didn't. Let me bring it up here. And then we'll go into the word Jew. Let's see, pagan. And that's why it's imperative, family, to study these words. Words have meaning. Words have spirits associated with it, can have demonic stuff. You could be speaking curses over your brothers and sisters and don't even know it. All right. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and add this here. All right. Bringing it up here. Share screen. And then we'll get back into the Jew portion of it. All right. Where we at? Let's see. Trying to find my browser so I can ensure that I'm using the right one. And now my browser's not showing up here. All right, let's pull this one up. All right. All right, that's not what I want, but guess what? I could change that. Let me go to there right now. All right. Let's do the etymology of this here. Let's do the etymology. Let's see. Pagan. I want y'all to pay attention to this definition here. And I'm going to zoom it on your screen so that way you can see it. and then we'll get into the word Jew. All right. If you guys can see this, type 1. If you can see this clearly, let me maximize this. All right. Let me zoom in more. Let's see if this will help. All right. Okay. If you guys can see this, type 1. And I really want you guys to pay attention to this, right? I taught this in a different lesson, but I don't have it inside here. And this is why it's imperative for you to pay attention to these definitions. Let me pull out my one of my books over here. I got tons of books over here in my office. Now let me pull up pagan inside here so that way I can see and connect, do a comparison here of etymologies. All right. But I'm sure you guys probably seen some things there that kind of stand out, and I'm going to address it here. All right. And this is what's so interesting. And you're going to see, I'm going to show you here what it says here, and we're going to do a comparison. Let's start with what's on your screen. Notice what it says. It says 14th century, perhaps mid 14th century, person of non-Christian or Jewish faith. Person of what? Non-Christian, non-Jewish faith. It goes on to say, as you see here, pagan in the classical Latin, villager, rustic, civilian, non-combatant. Then we go down here, we see where it says noun use of adjective, meaning of the country, of a village. Let's go ahead down here where I want to get to, right? Let's get to this portion over here. And I want to enlarge in this a little bit more so you guys can see it. I want you guys to really pay attention to this. And I want to bring this up here. I hope you guys really see what's happening here. Now, notice what it says here. It says the religious sense of often was said in 19th century to derive from conservative rule adherence to the old gods. No, this is not the one I want looking for. Let's go down here. This is where I want to get to, down this portion of it. Paragraph 2 is what we're going to highlight. The English word was used later in a narrower sense of one not a Christian, not a Jew, or a Muslim, as person of heathenish character or habits, right? By 1841, applied to modern pantheists and nature worshipers from 1901. But look at what it says here. This is what I really want you to pay attention to, right? I'm going to highlight this here so that way you can really see what I'm going to read. Now, look at what it says here, right? Coming from the Century Dictionary, 1897. Pagan and heathen are primarily the same in meaning, but pagan is sometimes distinctly applied to those nations that, although worshiping false gods and more cultivated as, and he gives examples here, as the Greeks, the Romans, and heathen to uncivilized idolaters as the tribes of Africa. A Mohammedan is not counted a pagan, much less a heathen. Now, let me read that again. So be careful, family. When you call in people heathens, oftentimes heathens were referred to our brothers and sisters. It was referred to us. It was referred to our ancestors. Now, let me read it again. Let me enlarge in this. Let me enlarge in this so that way you guys can see it again. Let's try this one more time, family. Right? Let's try this one more time. Pagan and heathens. Pagan and heathens are primarily the same in meaning, but pagan is sometimes distinctively applied to those nations that, although worshiping false gods, are more cultivated as, and it gives examples, the Greeks and the Romans. But notice again, for heathen, it says, and heathen. So when you say pagans, and this is why you have to look in our scriptures, because when you start paying attention to some of these translations where you see heathen, it's referring to the tribes or nations that are what? Of African, that's in that continent, right? You'll see that they refer to Ethiopians in some of the translations as heathens. But then when you see Romans, they're referred to as pagans.
What?
Yeah, absolutely. So Romans and heathens to the uncivilized idolaters, right? So even though they're they don't believe, but guess what? They're not gonna, they use that word pagan for them, right? But then when we look at the word heathen, right? When we look at it here, and heathen to the uncivilized idolaters, right? Let me read it again. I want to make sure I didn't mess it up here. So pagan was applied to the more cultivated. That's the sophisticated word, right? More cultivated, who they deem to be civilized, the civilized communities, the civilized nations, the Greeks and the Romans. But the heathen is to the uncivilized idolaters as the Africans.
What?
That's right. That's right. We're gonna have to put this on the bucket list. Here we go. All right. So family, this is why it's imperative. Pay attention to these words, right? There's a lot of things that are lost in translation, period, going from one language to another language. All right. So let me put my presentation back up. All right, let's see here. I'm going to stop. Now let's deal with a little bit of the Jews. We're going to try to do as much as we can. Let's bring them back up here, that presentation back up. All right, here we go. Let's go into we're going to touch a little bit on the Jews. And matter of fact, let me pull it up on the screen real quick. I know I mentioned about the etymology dictionary. I took it down, but let me show you real quick, family. I encourage you guys. This is one of many that I have. And I can tell you that the definition that I read is not falling in alignment with this book right here. This etymology dictionary right here is not falling in alignment with it. And this is the input. Let's see here. The input is, let me see here. All right, put my finger next to it. This is the input right here for pagan. And you're not going to see what you saw online here. I'm not going to put it up here. I don't want to knock the mic over and everything. But this is a good book. I'm going to say this again. I got others, but this is a great book, a simple book. I'll put it on your screen so that way you guys can see it. Let me take this down for a second. All right, let me put this up here on the screen so you can see it. All right. The Bernhardt Dictionary of Etymology, The Origins of American English Words, Robert K. Barnhart. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure you guys get to see that. All right. Got some of my books over here that's close to me. Okay. So let's get back into it. Let's touch on let's touch a little bit on the Jews. I want to hit one key point here real quick. Let me go ahead and enlarge the screen again. All right, so let's go to another portion of this lesson. Let's deal with the Jews. We dealt with the Gentiles, right? And we're going to tie this in together. We're still going to go back to Romans. So let's go to the Jewish Almanac, right? This is my favorite book. I go to this source over and over again. If you don't have this book, family, you need to get this book. Let me say that again. This is a great source. I've been using this source for years on top of years. This is the book that I use to single-handedly knock down a lot of the stuff, whether it's coming from whatever community, when they try to tell me, make it a point to try to tell me who we're not, right? And I want to say this again, inside this book, right, there's some great information here that literally the Jewish community as we know them, they literally tell you who they are. They tell you who they're not. But unfortunately, many of our brothers and sisters don't want to listen. You know, many of our brothers and sisters, they are literally bent on regurgitating the lies no matter what. All right. So let me go ahead and I know I made some little changes to what you see on your screen, updated it a little bit. This presentation dated compared to my other presentations, but still information still good. A brief history of the terms for Jew, right? This is coming from the 1980, right? The Jewish Almanac, 1980, page 3. That's why I have the screen print in the background so you can see I own this book. If I had my bag in here, I will pull this book out of my bag. I carry this book with me at all times. So this is what you'll see there. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew. Let me say that again. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew. Right? Let me say it one more time. Let me say it one more time. Let me say it in slow motion. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew. For the people in the back. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. The first Hebrews may not have been Jews at all. In other words, we got to pay attention to the little things that are here. Inside their own book, they tell you do not, bring these two words do not use them synonymously. Right? Do not use this synonymously. Right? Get this book. I guarantee you, when you pull this book out, regardless of who you're dealing with, they will not be able to answer some of the things that you can pull out of this book. So it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew. For those that may be part of the Christian groups that may be watching this is why so many of our brothers and sisters that have been awakened, including myself, I will not use this. I don't use myself. I don't call myself a Jew. I don't refer to myself as a Jew. I refer to myself as an Israelite. We're all here. I am a blood descendant. Bloodline connects to the ancient Israelites. Whether we point it out with the Limbas, right? Because that's the number one on my list. The Igbos, which is also in my list. The Ethiopian Hebrews, which is on my list. I could pull some Morocco. I could go right down, all inside each one of our lists. All that means is just that showing us the migration patterns and all that other stuff. Not getting into that. But guess what? I am a blood descendant of Israel. Because when I see that word Jew, I look at that word convert. Because inside that word Jew, right? That word Jew, when you start understanding the law of return and you start understanding how they do the dynamics of it, you got so many Y chromosome mutations within the Jewish community, which means that converts, that's what it means. When you see, for example, I have a mutation. If I had 12 sons, right? Like Jacob had 12 sons. Guess what? All of his sons are going to have the same Y mutation. Right? The Levites didn't have a different mutation than the rest of the brothers. Right? All of them had the exact same Y mutation. All right. So again, strictly speaking, it is incorrect. This is coming from their own book. It is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or as it says, or to call a contemporary, a modern Jew, an Israelite or a Hebrew. They even say that the rules apply to the Palestinians. All right. So Romans chapter 9, verse 24. Let's go back here. This text that we highlighted earlier. even us, whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. Now, family, if you understand hermeneutics, if you understand the term exegete, if these so-called leaders that are teaching this text was doing the proper exegeting this text, the proper hermeneutics, biblical hermeneutics, they'll see that this entire chapter has nothing to do with non-blood descendants of Israel. We'll see that they're referring to the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Right? Look at here. This is in the background here. For the scripture said unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised you up, that I might, you see, this is referring to Israel. This has nothing to do with the Gentiles. This is Apostle Paul, or non-blood descendants of Israel. This is Apostle Paul dealing with Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom in this particular text. But let me go ahead and prove it here. Right? Even us, whom he hath called, not to the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. So let's go to the key understanding of this verse. Right? Let's the key to understanding this verse. Let's define the word Jew. Let me say that again. The keys to understanding this verse. Let's start with defining the word Jew. Most Bible readers do not truly understand the word Jew. Let's start with the etymology. And I have the comparison inside this lesson. Notice what it says here. A Jew. Notice what it says here. One of the Jewish race or religion. One of. When did the Jewish community have multiple races? It says one of the Jewish race. Do you see the confusion here? Now, guess what? I'm going to show you the issue here. Because this word is supposed to be initially a transliteration of a transliteration. But notice what it says here. It says Anglo-French. We see modern French. We see Latin, Udeum. We see the Greek, Udeos. We see Aramaic, Yehudi. We see it's supposed to refer to the southern kingdom, or Judah, the nation, the tribe, or Judah, the son of Jacob, who sold his birthrights or gave away his birthrights. Not necessarily, excuse me, not his birthrights, his identity, his ID, his signet, his staff, the things that identify who he is. He took that for a moment of pleasure. I gave away his identity for a moment of pleasure. Anyway, so one of the Jewish race or religion. So let's go to doing an etymology comparison here. This is a screen print from the Barnhart Etymology Dictionary that I pointed out. Now, notice what you see here. This is the actual screen print, right? It says here, a Jew, probably before the 12th century, but notice what it says, borrowed through Anglo-French. But you see, you don't see one of the race. You don't see the word race here. You see where I'm going? Judah, name of the fourth son of Jacob. Wait a minute. How come we don't see that? Let's go back here. Let's go back to this etymology here. That's online. How come we don't see the son of Jacob here? Oh, yeah, we do. My apologies. I overlooked it. That's my apology. I overlooked it. I was jumping the gun. I was about to say, wait a minute. How come we don't see the son of Jacob there? It's just that I didn't continue put it here. I accidentally forgot to put it here. My bad. I corrected myself. Forgive me, people. I was about to go there. I was like, wait a minute. How come we don't see Jacob there? That's because I didn't copy the full text there. All right. So, but we don't see race here. So when did Jew become one of, going back here, let's go back here, see what it says, one of the Jewish race or religion, one of, so that will have you believe that there's multiple. And you don't see this line, this quote here under the Barnhart, as I highlighted here. You don't see this anywhere. All right. So when was the Jewish community, as we know them, ever recognized as a separate race? When? When were they ever recognized as a race? That's a whole nother discussion there. All right. You know what? I got to blame someone about my shooting the gun about the Jacob entry. I'm going to blame Mr. Original, Mr. The Original School. And you know what? Just because you want to blame me, now you're going to have to get the bucket list award. Here we go. Let's give you the bucket list. You've been added to the bucket list, buddy. Yeah, man. You are now in the bucket list just because you tried to throw me under the bus. All right. All right. So let's get back into it. All right. So everyone, Mr. The Original, guess what? He is in the bucket. He just got the bucket list. He got added to the bucket list. All right. So let's touch on this a little bit, and we're going to have to do a part 2 on this. But this book right here, I encourage you guys, get this book, Benjamin Friedman, Facts Are Facts. It's so much in here. He challenged the Jewish community. He's from out of the Jewish community. He challenged them back in the 50s and 60s and warned the United States of what they were doing. He challenged theologians about challenged them like, hey, if you want to call, he literally tell them, if you think I'm incorrect about what I am saying, come tell me. Let's have an open debate. He challenged all of them. But what did they decide to try to do? Smear his name. But he was taking money out of his own pocket to put this truth out there. So I'm just going to share a little bit out of his book. Facts Are Facts, right? The available original manuscript from the 4th century to the 18th century accurately traced the origin and the complete history of the word Jew in the English language. Family, remember when I did the teaching about the English language? I dealt with some of it last week in part 1. And I'm going to do the full presentation, The Deception of the English Language. And I share with you the tree of languages, as far as in terms of the Proto-Indo-European. And I saw some of you guys requesting a copy of that tree. Shoot me an email. My email address is on the ticker below, and I'll send you an email because I'll send it to you. All right, but nevertheless, let's get back to it. But we see here, it says that this word Jew, notice what it says. Their origin it says the available manuscript from the 4th century to the 18th century accurately trace the origins and give the complete history of the word Jew in the English language. And these manuscripts are to be found all the many earlier English equivalents extending through the 14th centuries from the 4th to the 18th century. So this word Jew is of an origin, as I pointed out earlier, of the English language, ultimately from the Proto-Germanic tree or trunk of languages. Jew is a Germanic term. Interesting, right? It's out of what? The tree, the languages of Japheth, the nations of Japheth. That's part of their culture. This word Jew, and remember I told you guys, look up the word Jute. I wonder if you guys did your homework, right? He goes on to say here, from the Latin Udeos to the English Jew, these forms successively, and I'm not going to butcher these different pronunciations as you see here. And then it says, then finally in the 18th century, Jew. All right. As we just see here, with the rapidly expanding use of the English in the 18th century for the first time in history of the greatly improved printing presses, unlimited qualities of the New Testament were printed. So the Jewish Encyclopedia definition of Jew, let's see what it says. It basically lines up with what we just read. Up to the 17th century, this is Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 7. Up to the 17th century, this word was spelled in the Middle English in various ways. And these are the different ways it was spelled. All these forms were derived from the Old English And we see there, which was earlier written. All right, just give me some of the evolution of this word, right? But notice what you see here, right? That word Jew did not come from Udeos. See, this is where we start getting into some of the deceptions here. That word Jew did not come from Udeos. It did not come from the Greeks. See how in this Jewish encyclopedia, how they took this word and forced the narrative of saying that this word basically, look at how they connected to Latin, right? And then they connected from Latin to connecting it to the Greek, and then correct from the Greek, connecting it to the Aramaic, and then connecting from the Aramaic to the Hebrew, to try to give this impression that this word comes from the Hebrew. No, it has no correlation. None. And I'm going to show you here. However, but to members of the nationality inhabiting the south of Palestine. All right, not going to get into that. So let's go back to the facts of facts. Secondary meaning of the word Jew. Let's see what he says about it. He gives some explosive information on here. Facts of facts. The generally accepted second meaning of the word Jew today, with practically no exceptions, is made up of 4 almost universally believed theories. These 4 theories are that a so-called or self-styled Jew is, number 1, a person who professes the form of religious worship known as Judaism. See, our ancestors wasn't practicing this Judaism that they try to do the correlation. They weren't practicing. Our ancient brothers and sisters were not worshiping and utilizing the Talmud. They did not have no oral Talmud, the oratory. That's all the Talmud is supposed to be, the oral written. That's a complete lie, and I can prove it and have proven it. Number 2, a person who claims to belong to a racial group associated with the ancient Semites. See these secondary meanings? A person directly the descendant of an ancient nation, which thrived in Palestine in biblical history. Notice what it says. You could be of an ancient nation that lived in the area, but you could still be considered a Jew. You can still be considered a Jew, even though you're not blood descendant of Israel, but long as you lived in that ancient area. You see what's happening here? Right? This is coming right out of Benjamin Friedman's Facts of Facts. Number 4, a person blessed by divine international design with certain superior cultural character denied to other racial, religious, or national groups, all rolled into one. The present generally accepted secondary meaning of the word Jew is fundamentally responsible for the confusion in the minds of Christians regarding elementary tenets of the Christian faith. Oh, y'all see what I'm telling you guys, this book is explosive. He is literally picking apart. He's calling out Christianity because these theologians know what I am saying is true. They know what he said. This is true. He calling them out. And I don't know if I put the bullets in there, but he called them out. Told them that they know what they teaching is a lie. These people up in the church, these so-called educators, they know what they teaching is a lie. If they went to seminary like I did, if they went to a higher education, right, they know that what they're saying is false. That's why, even though I am awakened, that's why I refuse to use certain terms. These present generally accepted secondary meaning of the word Jew is fundamentally responsible for the confusion, of the minds of Christians regarding elementary, in other words, basic foundational tenets of their faith, of the Christian faith.
What?
Let's continue. So let's deal with the 12 tribes, understanding the 12 tribes, right? Let's go back to Romans chapter 9, verse 24. And we're going to toggle between the two for a little bit. But let me just go back to Romans 9:24. And I'm going to show you that Apostle Paul is not dealing with non-blood descendants of Israel in this particular text. Even us whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles, right? So the Greek word used in this verse is oudeos, right? And oudeos, right? Or oudeos, my accent just kicks in, so I just say oudeos, right? But oudeos, as you see on here. But anyway, it says Judah, right? Belonging to Judah, Jews, Judah. But notice what it says here. See, this is why these definitions, these dictionaries can be confusing. As a country, because we do know Judah was a southern kingdom. With Judah, an example belonging to Judah, we know that tribe of Judah or descendant of Judah. And then we see Judah, it could be the son. But notice this, Jewish belonging to the Jewish nation. Come on, get family. This shouldn't even be here. Jewish as respect to the birth, origin, religion. These entries should not be here. See, this, even in the definition here, this is causing confusion. Created a modern construct and backdated it, right? So here it is. The Hebrew definition of Jew, right? Even though we're just using it for now, Yahweh is the ancient pronunciation, right? And as you see, many would say Yehuda, right? That's how many of you guys probably pronounce it, but that's a whole, not getting into all of that. But notice what it says here. Judah or Judah. Name of 5 Israelites. Notice it says name of 5 Israelites. Also the tribe descended from the first. And then also it says of its territory, Judah. All right. So let's go back to Romans chapter 9, verse 25 through 26. And he saith also in Hosea, right? Hosea is actually Hosea. I will call them my people, which they were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Family, I could tell you in Romans chapter 9, I can give you every text that Paul is quoting from, what many call the prophets or the Old Testament, or what made the established covenant. But here he's quoting out of the prophet Hosea. Hosea's name is the same name that Joshua had before Moses added the Yah to the beginning. Now I'm going to show you here. All right. So, and he saith also in Hosea, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Paul is not saying this statement to address non-Israelites. He's referring to the children of Israel in this entire chapter. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall be called the children of the living Most High, children of the living Yah. Now, what scripture is Apostle Paul quoting? I gave you the answer, but let's go to it. Hosea chapter 2, verse 23. So why is Apostle Paul quoting this scripture? See, the entire chapter, the entire book of Hosea is dealing with Israel. Has nothing to do with non-Israelites. Has nothing to do with non-Israelites. So in this text that I highlighted, Apostle Paul is giving references to Israel. He's not dealing with those that are not blood descendants of Israel. This Jew and Gentile in that text is actually the northern and southern kingdom. So why is Apostle Paul quoting this scripture? Let's go there. And I will sow unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that I had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, thou art my people, and they shall say, thou art my Elohim. But let's go to the chapter 1 of Hosea. Let's get clarity on here. because this sets the whole tone of who is being addressed in this text, right? Verse 2, we're going to highlight verse 2, start with verse 2. The beginning of the word, right? Actually, this is actually verse 1. I don't know why it has 2 there. I don't know, guys. Let me make sure. Yeah, this is verse 2. I'm sorry. I'm messing up, getting confused with my own slides, right? But anyway, the beginning of the word of Yahweh by Hosea, right? Ashawai, right? And Yahweh said to Hosea, go, take unto thee a wife, right? Of whoredoms and, right? So let's define Hosea right now, right? Let's define his name. Notice what you see here. Deliverer, Hosea, the name of 5 Israelites. Notice what it means. Hosea, Hoshea, Oshea, salvation, right? And this gives you some information here in the background. Notice what it says. The family name of Joshua, the son of Nun. The 19th and last king of the northern kingdom of Israel, son of Beri, right? Just giving you some additional sources here. All right. So Joshua had Joshua's name tied right into this name, meaning what? Salvation. All right. So Hosea's name means deliverer. His name comes from the Hebrew word for salvation, right? And here it is, that where it comes from. We see Yasha means to be open, free, to be safe, avenge, defend, deliver, deliverer, help, preserve, rescue, be safe. So Hosea was instructed by the Most High to marry an adulterous woman. He did this for the sake of the prophet understanding the issue that the Most High is having with his people. So who is the adulterous woman? Let me pull it up. What is significance? What is the significance of her children? Hosea chapter 1, verse 3 and 4. Let's go to those 2 verses here. And I'm going to show you. So he went and took Gomer. This is not who you think it is. It's not from Japheth. Japheth. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare a son, bear him a son. And Yahweh said unto him, call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. Right? So the Hebrew definition of Jezreel, just to give you some information on it, it means Yahweh will sow. All right. So Jezreel simply means Yah scatters. All right. Let me say that again. Jezreel simply means Yah scatters. So just give you more clarity. So the name was a sign that the Most High would scatter Israel and end the dynasty of King Jehu because of the cruel murders he had committed in Jezreel. The Most High had chosen Jehu to be his agent of judgment against the king Ahab and the infamous Jezebel, right? And executing justice throughout the land. Jehu went overboard. Jehu went far beyond what Yahweh had instructed him to do, killing even some of the innocent people. Although he had been appointed to execute the justice against the murderous house of Ahab and Jezebel, he became ruthless and committed atrocities that went well beyond what he was called to do. That's why these nations that the Most High has used to chastise his people, they went overboard with their authority per se, and judgment is going to come. Right? So once he launched these righteous executions, he obviously became gripped with power and political self-interest, setting out to eliminate anyone who could conceivably be a threat to his authority. So now I want to deal with his seeds, right? You see Loru Hama, right? Loru Hama. Let's see what it means. It says here, not pitied. Lo Rukhama, the symbol name of a son of Hosea, right? So let's go to verse 6 and 7 and bring this all together. And she conceived again and bare a daughter. And the Most High said, call her name Lahuhaman, or La Rakhamah. That's the proper ancient pronunciation. La Rakhamah. For I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Notice we're not dealing with any other nations. That's the point I want to really make here. We're dealing with Israel, but I will have mercy upon the house of Judah. Notice right here, we see we're dealing with the house of Israel. She is representing, this daughter right here is representing the judgment that's coming to the northern kingdom, the house of Israel. But notice right here, verse 7, but I will have mercy upon the house of Judah. So we see the northern kingdom being referenced in verse 6, and we see the southern kingdom being referenced in verse 7. So we're still dealing with who? The northern and southern kingdom. So her name was also a sign of the Most High's judgment that was coming to Israel, to the northern kingdom. Her name, La'arakhamah, means that it was time for justice and judgment to be executed, not mercy. So, given more clarity, Hosea's second child was to be the sight, or should I say, a sign, proof, evidence that the Most High would no longer forgive or show love to Israel at this time. It was time for him to pass judgment. The day for mercy had passed. The Assyrian army would be allowed to crush the northern kingdom of Israel and to deport the survivors to other nations. So the Assyrians would be allowed to deport the northern kingdom survivors to other nations, making them become what? Outcasts, because that's another term that they were referred to as being outcasts. They were referred to being outcasts. That was another name for the northern kingdom, outcasts. Oh, let me tie this in. The Hebrew word, dakai, right? The northern kingdom were also called outcasts, dakai. The northern kingdom were also called Ephraim. Going to verse 12 and 13, just to confirm this. Look at this here. And he shall set up an ensign, proof, evidence for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel. The outcast, dakai, of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. We're still dealing with the northern and southern kingdom. We're not dealing with non-blood descendants of Israel. And this is what Apostle Paul is referring to. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart. Notice they called him Ephraim as well, as I just pointed out. And the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex in Ephraim. So who are the Gentiles in this scripture? Who are the Gentiles in this scripture? Let me bring up another scripture. See, I already proved to you that that first text that I brought out has nothing to do with non-blood descendant of Israel. But let me bring up another text here. Acts chapter 15, verse 16 and 17. After this, I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. Verse 17, that the residue of men might seek after Yahweh, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith Yahweh, who doeth all these things. Now we got to see what Apostle Paul is quoting here. We got to get clarity here. Residue. What does residue mean? Here's the etymology of it. The remainder, that which is left after a part is taken. A remainder, that which is left behind, left over, remain behind. What remains of an estate after debt, etc., have been paid. So let's go to Amos chapter 9, verse 11 and 12, and then we're going to give a proper understanding of who Paul is referring to. Notice here, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the heathens. See what I told you? Heathen here, which are called by my name, saith Yahweh, that doeth this. Now we're dealing with a whole different group of people. So the Gentiles Apostle Paul is referring to in the is in that text I highlighted is the remnant of Edom and all of what? The other nations that are not blood descendants of Israel. which are called by the reputation, the authority of Yah. And we're going to stop right there. We're going to stop right there. See, family, I just gave you two sources, right? Right? Two sources. Let's go back to this verse I just highlighted. I could have gone further, but I don't, want to keep it simple, right? Going back to what Apostle Paul quoted, right? In this text, Apostle Paul is dealing with non-blood descendants of Israel, right? But in the other text I highlighted with Romans, he's dealing with the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. This is why I say it's important. It's imperative for you when you're reading this text, know what Apostle Paul is, know what they're referring to. That the residue, actually, this is Luke that wrote this, right? He wrote the book of Acts, right? So Luke is actually quoting from Hosea. All right. So family, we're going to stop right here. I know I gave you a lot of information here. And real quick, before I wrap up to conclude episode 2, I'm going to drop the link inside the chat. And if Jay Highstyle or any one of you guys want to jump in real quick, it is going to be dropped inside the comment section. If any of you guys want to jump in real quick, there is the chat there. And family, I appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. And I hope and pray that you guys learned, got some clarity on exactly what a Gentile is. Like I said, I know it can be confusing, but you have to go into the text itself to know exactly who's being referenced, right? Who's being, who the text is referring to, what geographic people, and as I said, Acts chapter 15 is verse 16 to 17. We're dealing with those that are not blood descendants of Israel, but we also dealing with the remnant of Edom. Edom, that's Esau. Edom, that's descendants of Esau. But then when we went to the other text, now we're dealing with the northern and southern kingdom. And Paul was quoting out of Hosea in that text. I could give other sources that he was quoting from inside that text that still refers to him dealing with who? Israel. And in that text, Gentile, he's referring to nation, the northern kingdom, the northern nations. All right. So I just dropped the link here. Give you another minute or two if anyone wants to jump on. If not, we're going to call it a wrap. I really appreciate you guys for jumping in and just supporting this lesson here. Share the video, share it on your YouTube, share it on your Facebook. Just really share it, get the information out, and we will be working on part 2. Not part 2, but we'll be dealing with episode 3. And if there's any words that is confusing to you, if there's any words that you want me to do an episode on, shoot me an email. My email is highlighted at the bottom of your screen. It's in the banner, the ticker that's going across your screen at the bottom here. We are woke now at gmail.com. I got you, Jay Highstyle. Okay, I got you, man. I got you. I know you're taking it easy tonight. All right, because we kind of geeks up here. All right, but family, I really appreciate you guys. And family, just be safe. And like I said, I'm doing this series so that way you have some foundational information that you can take with you, and you can really learn from it, and you can really grow from it, and you can actually help others as well. All right. So again, hit the like if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, and Sister Yvette or Vet 78. Just feel free to go back over the lesson, covered a lot, but I really appreciate it. And guys, if you have anyone, we're going to close out with giving some bucket, increase our bucket list. If you guys have anyone that you guys want me to give add to our bucket list, just post it, and I'm going to add them to the bucket list. So let's add to the bucket list anyone, these theologians and all of that have really messed up the waters, so to speak, to make it hard for people to really get to the basic foundation. So I'm gonna give add to the bucket list these wicked theologians. Anyone that continues to poorly teach deceptively teach Apostle Paul's letters? Let's add them to the bucket list. All right. Who else do we have here? All right. Somebody said add the apologists. Yeah, let's add them to the bucket list. Let's go ahead. Anyone that's not properly defending the word of the Most High, let's add them to the bucket list right now. Here we go. John Hagee. Yeah, we got to put John Hagee in it. Let's add John Hagee to the bucket list. Yeah, we got to do a double bucket list for him. Let's add John Hagee. I had to add some additional stuff with John Hagee, boy. That's right. Jesse Duplantis. We got to add Jesse Duplantis. We're going to continue to add to this bucket list. Let's add Jesse Duplantis because I taught against some of his teachings a while back, but let's put him in there. Let's add him to the bucket list. All right. Let's see here. All right, we're gonna continue to add all these guys up to the with the bucket list. Oh, somebody say TD Jakes. Yeah, TD Jakes he jacked me. I ain't gonna hate on him for that. He done jacked me of one of my teachings that I did, literally. Right. But anyway, let's add TD Jakes to the bucket list here. All right. So we got a long list here, but family, we're going to go ahead and call it a wrap. I really appreciate you guys. Oh, we got to get Creflo Dollar. Let me get him up in here. Yeah, let me get Creflo Dollar up in here. Let me get him up in here. He got to be added before we wrap up. Let me add him to the bucket list.
It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over!
All right, so I had to add some additional stuff with him. All right, so family, but again, I love humor, and laughter is good for our souls. So family, we're going to go ahead and give a wrap up here. I appreciate you guys for taking time this first day of the week night. Really appreciate you guys for taking the time out. Go back over the lesson, write down some of these sources, and we'll prepare for the next session that we're going to do. And I'm thinking about the next session is going to be spirits and ghosts, right? Words of confusion, spirits and ghost. Words of confusion, because many will say the Holy Ghost. Should we be referring to the Most High Spirit as a ghost? Oh, yeah. That's going to be a tough one right there for many. So we're going to use that for next week. Next week, the next episode 3, we're going to deal with ghost, spirits and ghosts, the Holy Ghost versus the Holy Spirit. Are they contradictions? Are they the same, or is it a contradiction? So we're going to deal with that next week. Put that on your calendar. So with that being said, family, as Moses said to the children of Israel, as they got ready to go across that water, it was dealing with, hindrance. They had opposition in front of them. They had what seemed to be a dead end. They was dealing with water in front of them with their past, which represents the Egyptians trying to catch up with them. And so Moses had to encourage the people under the instructions of the Most High, told them to fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, they will never have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you, but you have to be quiet. That's what the proper understanding, not just hold your peace, but you have to be quiet. The Hebrew word is karash, which means be quiet. The Most High will fight for you, but family, we have to learn how to be quiet and let him do what he's going to do. With that being said, have a great night, family. Shalom.